Today, court documents were filed in the Tirzepatide case. The FDA has appointed their attorney, Kimberly R. Stevens. And at first glance, it doesn't seem like a huge development, but we have our next guest, Kham, on to explain why it could play a key part in the Tirzepatide showdown. Hey, Kham, welcome back.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good, doing good. So we got the notice of appearance today.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I understand there's something a little bit more important about not only who the lawyer is, but tell us about it.
The OFA, the Outsourcing Facilities Association, initiated a lawsuit against the FDA claiming that they were in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act, which is essentially an act that so that there's a separation of powers between the federal branches. And kind of what that means is you don't want to have any federal agency like have too much power to where they can create a regulation and then enforce the regulation that they wish to enforce without getting any like feedback or guidance to make sure that the regulation is fair, etc. So it essentially just is, separation of powers, checks and balances to make sure that there are procedures for when rules and regulation is established. Like I said, there's a period for public commenting, and then there's judicial review, etc. And what's weird about this is because the OFA made their lawsuit based on violation of the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA, based off the idea, this is kind of what I'm gathering from it, I could be incorrect, but based off from what I understand, they're making this argument that changing the Tirzepatide drug status from in shortage to available or no longer in shortage resolved, they're saying was a violation of the APA. Now, we were on a live the other day, and we had a lawyer come up. It was Candace's
Susan.
live. Yeah, Susan came up, and I'm glad she did because I could not make this association within my brain. Like I said, I don't have any legal background at all, but just from having like a very, very basic understanding of what the APA is, and kind of loosely reading this lawsuit, I couldn't understand how they're making the connection between the FDA making a determination on a drug shortage being a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act because the FDA didn't establish any new procedures. They didn't make any new legislation. They didn't make any new regulation. Now, if they would have made some type of regulation that stated that they were, I guess, changing how they determine drug shortages or some new regulations stating that, they were going to somehow, for whatever reason, make a document stating that the drug shortage was over, then I guess that would kind of go back into the APA because there's some form of legislation that the FDA is trying to enforce. But that's not what we're looking at right here. All the FDA technically did was change the status of a drug shortage, which is completely within their purview, which they do with thousands of drugs every day. And so in the discussion, one of the things that Susan said was, okay, well, they're probably just trying to throw things out to see what will stick. And here's what I kind of believe why they're doing that. In the lawsuit, they asked for a temporary restraining order. And Candace, quote me or help me out if I'm wrong. I believe the TRO was for 14 days, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So here's the weird thing: the 503Bs already have 60 days. Now, what's kind of weird within that is technically they're supposed to stop accepting new scripts after the shortage ends. But any scripts they had before that, any scripts that were in the queue before that, technically they still have 60 days to continue that production in order, to facilitate whatever orders they had prior to. They just technically can't take any orders afterwards. Okay. But they're asking for 14 days when really they already have 60. I personally think that this isn't about the 503Bs. I think it's about the 503As because they don't have an exemption at all. And if you go back to the rules, 503Bs, they can they can make prescriptions in bulk and they can make patient specific prescriptions. But 503Bs cannot dispense directly to a patient. Okay, so take a minute on that. 503Bs, they can do bulk and they can make patient specific prescriptions, but they can't dispense directly to the patient. In order for a 503B to get their product directly to a patient, it either has to go through a 503A or it has to go to a physician or a doctor's office or some type of healthcare institution, right?
Mhm.
So we go back to the source of the problem. The shortage, Tirzepatide's off the shortage list. 503As can't really move because they have to stop as soon as the shortage ends unless they can verify a specific medical necessity for each individualized patient. So, really, what I think this was that the OFA was trying to do, I think they were trying to do two things. I think they're obviously trying to challenge the FDA's decision making. There were a lot of allegations made within the court document. Definitely allegations made that the FDA didn't do their due diligence, that they just went off what the manufacturer said. There's some allegations in there that even sound borderline fraudulent. Some big allegations that were made, and I think they were made with a limited amount of evidence. But I really do think that this was kind of a play to try to cover the 503As so that they have the ability to keep selling the product that they're getting from the 503Bs. Okay. I think it was kind of a play on that.
Right.
Um, Now, here's where it gets a little weird. So we go back to the fact that the lawsuit was based off of the idea that the APA had been violated. Now, normally, when the FDA or whatever federal entity gets sued, if they get sued based off of being in violation with the APA, the type of attorney that would defend said federal regulation in that case would come from the federal programs branch. So the federal programs branch, basically their purpose, and I'm pulling this from the internet, they defend the government against challenges to policies and programs and enforce federal laws regulation. Um, this would have made sense because it would have been in line with the APA. It would have been in line against, like, for what they're being sued for per se. However, that's not the approach that they took. Instead, the FDA has appointed someone from the Consumer Protection Branch of the Department of Justice. And that is a very, very specific choice because the Consumer Protection Branch, they're like the subject matter experts of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. Okay. The Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act is the thing that I've been essentially yelling about all over YouTube and TikTok and everything else because that is the act that everyone's trying to get around in order to figure out how they're going to continue to sell these compounded GLP-1s. And so instead of hiring litigation that would speak directly to the APA, they hired litigation to speak directly to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. That was a very specific move. Now, here's what I think that means. I don't have any background in legal. This is just my speculation. At first, I thought that the case would probably be thrown out because a lot of the allegations that were made without really any substantial evidence. Like if you look at the court document that the OFA submitted, I mean, there there were a lot of allegations and stuff that we talk about on social media, etc. But so be it. So I was like, it'll probably get thrown out. Maybe it'll move, but But my status has changed on that. And the reason why my status has changed is because I'm now thinking that the FDA is going to countersue. And I think they're going to countersue the OFA on the grounds that they are in federal violation of the Food, Drugs, and Cosmetics Act. That is now what I think it's going to happen. And the reason I think that's going to happen is because, in my opinion, the Food, Drugs, Cosmetics Act didn't necessarily have anything directly to do with how the OFA presented this case. They presented it based off of being out of compliance with the APA. And of course, they threw in Chevron because everyone's throwing in Chevron now so that they can challenge the government and the feds. But the response was completely left field. Like I said, they didn't bring in anyone from the federal programs branch to address the issues of being sued on the APA. They didn't bring anyone to say, hey, this has nothing to do with the APA. We didn't file new regulation. We're not enforcing anything. We just changed a drug status. They didn't do that. They could have just responded to what they were being sued for. But instead, they brought a lawyer from the Consumers Protection Branch of the Department of Justice, and that is who's going to be representing the FDA. And that is solely based on the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. So not only do I think they're going to respond to the allegations, I think there's a chance here that they may even countersue. And I think they may countersue, like I said, based off the idea that this compound pharmacy, along with many others, are acting out of federal compliance with the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act.
This pharmacy, the one that you're referring to, maybe is the co-plaintiff? The pharmaco?
Yeah, no, they're the plaintiffs.
So could the FDA sue an association?
They can sue whoever. They can. I don't see. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't see why they can't countersue. I mean, people countersue all the time.
And they might do it as an aggressive act just to, oh, wow.
So
How unusual is it that they hired, let me look at it, that's hired somebody from the Consumer Protection Branch?
it's not that okay. So let me. Okay, so it's not the fact that it's unusual. It's too coincidental. It's like, let me pull up the. Hold on here. So this is pulled from the Department of Justice, and this is what the Consumer Protection Branch does in regards to prescription drugs and medical devices. The Consumer Protection Branch investigates and litigates a wide range of criminal and civil violations of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and the Controlled Substances Act. Obviously, we're focusing on Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. Let's see, the branch also leads and monitors all department investigations of legitimate drug and device manufacturers selling adulterated and misbranded products, as well as fraudsters selling fake cures or counterfeit pharmaceuticals. The branch works closely in this area with the FDA, the DEA, and the FBI. Now, let's go back to what the original lawsuit was for. It was for the belief that the FDA violated the Administrative Procedures Act because they essentially changed a drug shortage status without telling anyone and giving anyone notice or providing any type of guidance or regulatory documentation on how they made that decision. That's pretty much what the basis of the lawsuit is, okay?
Right. That they didn't give the people the 30 days and the public time to reply and stuff.
Which they don't have to because the FDA didn't establish any new guidance. Like that's why I couldn't get this to make sense. But yes, that's kind of the basis that they're making the argument off of. But the FDA doesn't release documentation and notices that require public opinion whenever they decide to change a drug shortage status. They just do it because that is within their purview. But I get it. How they make that decision, how do we know that it's not, in cahoots with manufactured pharmaceuticals, whatever, I get it. But that is the basis that they made it on. The response was to hire an attorney from the Department of Justice who works specifically in criminal and civil violations of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. That doesn't even align. They didn't hire an attorney that specializes in the APA. They hired one that specializes in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. That is the act that everyone has been trying to get around and evade in order so they can continue pushing these compound GLP 1s. That is what is very, very interesting. And that's what tells me there is a chance that the FDA is not only going to respond, they may actually countersue. And if they countersue, this thing's going to take a whole nother direction because now they can petition the pharmacies for information that may prove that they're acting out of compliance with the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, which is actually a federal violation. So, and that pulls in, like it says, DEA, FBI could even pull in the FTC. So,
The Federal Trade Commission?
Correct. And that's because of how they're selling it, how it's being advertised on social media, etc. So, essentially, depending on how the FDA plays this, they may, like the OFA may have just opened a door that they actually did not mean to open. Essentially, you have the OFA that are suing the FDA, and they're saying that they changed the status of a drug shortage to be in cahoots with, or to align with a drug manufacturer. There was even rumors about whether or not that drug manufacturer paid off the FDA, and all this crazy stuff that gets floated around the internet, and people start to believe without any proof or evidence, right? And you have the FDA, who's completely responsible for the safety of the country, who knows these 503As, along with 503Bs, are running this model to where they're compounding and they're making product and they're pushing it out. And so then the FDA does their job. They decide that the shortage is over, and then they get sued. Now, at this point, if I'm the FDA, now I'm pissed off because you're suing me based off something you weren't even really supposed to be doing in the first place. Now, yes, if there's a drug shortage, it's known that the 503Bs get involved and the 503As are allowed to. But what was not to be expected was for there to be what's been rumored to be $1 billion enterprise of compound pharmacies running GLP-1 medication because the insurance companies suck and big pharma sucks, or people can't afford it even with insurance because they're copay. Or, you do have what I believe is becoming a smaller set of people that literally cannot find the medication in their area. But the purpose of the exemption for the shortage was not to solve those first three issues. It was simply to be an option for people that don't have access to name brand that would normally utilize name brand because they can't find it in their area. And then, of course, there's always the thing of if you happen to have some type of specific situation to where you can't take name brand, then you're supposed to utilize compound. That's not what's happening. There is a multi-million, rumored to be billion-dollar enterprise just based off of compounding GLP-1 and getting it out to patients. There are multiple online business models to where some of them you don't even freaking talk to a doctor. You put in your information, it's approved, it gets into a pharmacy. This was never the intent of it. And the FDA knows these things are happening because everybody puts what they're doing all over social media. And so now the FDA, if I'm the FDA, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you're suing me because I made the decision that the drug shortage was over. That is in our level of expertise. And because you don't like it and you want to continue making money doing something that you really weren't supposed to do in the first place, you're going to sue me and question my department's integrity and say that the only reason why this happened was because we were in bed with the manufacturer.
But it does
Okay.
raise the question as to is it, normally when a drug comes off a shortage, I don't think that there is the scarcity that it is now. There is the argument to be had that it truly is not at a shortage, that it is still hard to find, regardless of people being able to afford it and whatnot. I think it was the fact that they took it off the market and people still can't find it, and then more so the reasons in which they gave that they took it off a shortage. It basically said, like, if you like a normal person, I think going to that website, the FDA website, and trying to discern what cold chain logistics are and all of that. So so basically said, just because you can't find it doesn't mean there's a shortage. And I think the average person is going to say, well, what do you mean if I can't find it,
But
there's
here's
not
the
a shortage?
thing. Here's the thing. There's some truth to that. And that's something I'm still actively researching. But I'll give you an example. This is a personal example. So there was a time at which I contacted Express Scripts, and I asked for certain milligrams of one of the name brands, and Express Scripts told me, oh, it's out of stock. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I have a friend who also has Express Scripts. They called the same number that I called, and it was in stock for them. And the question was, well, what insurance does that person have? And they had a different insurance than me. Oh, well, no, it's in stock for their insurance. What? How does that work? Oh, well, it depends upon the distro and if your insurance is purchasing anymore from the manufacturer.
What is a distro?
The distro, oh goodness. So I'm not completely well versed in this, but with it has to do with the distributor that actually purchases from the manufacturer. This is a thing. Okay. So even though we both had Express Scripts, it depended on which insurance under Express Scripts we had to determine whether or not it was available. I kid you not. I was on the phone with the lady from Express Scripts. I said, so okay, so you're saying under my insurance it's not available. Can you check and see if it's available for this insurance? She types it up in the computer. Oh yeah, no, all doses are available for them. What? Okay, there was another article that went out in 2023, and I'd have to pull it up, but the gist of it is there are certain pharmacies, normally the smaller mom and pop pharmacies, that purposely only purchase a certain number of GLP-1s from the manufacturer or from the distro because of the amount of money it costs to hold the drugs, and then the limited amount that they sometimes get reimbursed back, if it's even at the full amount that they paid for in the first place. There's a whole, there's, okay, they may be lying to a certain extent about the drug shortage, but there is a whole nother side of this that plays into it. There is. And we just don't know. But there is a reason why there's a breakdown in distro. There is a reason why certain pharmacies or even certain insurances under specific plans or PBMs only purchase a certain amount or have certain amounts available. There is a part of it that plays into this that's bigger than, well, if my pharmacy doesn't have it, it must be the manufacturer. We just don't know yet.
Hmm. Maybe that'll be part of this whole lawsuit, is at least that part coming out. May not help anybody out on the resolution that they want for this, but at least we might be able to get clarity as to why no one can find it. Because
Yeah,
I think that at the very least, the FDA will have to explain that.
they may. Yeah, if the court requires them, which I'm sure they may require them to explain their process if they have any official process and procedures, and really they should. I mean, this is something that the FDA does, on a daily basis, and it's CEDAR within the FDA that handles drug shortages, the Consumer for Drug Evaluation Research, I believe that stands for, but and from the FDA, yeah, Center for Drug Evaluation Research, and from the FDA website, they're a team of like 20 to 25 people, and they're the ones that are in charge of determining whether or not a shortage exists. So I would hope within that group they have some type of policies, procedures, breakdown of how they determine that drugs do come, often on the shortage list. Like I said, this is something that's not new. There's been many drug shortages. They actually say that the drug shortages that are occurring now are the highest in like the last decade. So I would assume they have a procedure, even though we don't have access to it. I'm
A
sure
procedure
that
for what? How stuff comes on and off a shortage?
correct for how they establish a shortage is over. I would assume they have that. If not, then this could blow up in their face. If they do just make calls, kind of randomly or off the cuff, and they don't have any background evidence to prove it, then yeah, it's going to be it could essentially be a bad day for them if the judge or if the court requires them to prove how they made their decision. If that gets brought up in court, um, but if they can prove it, if they can prove it, and they can prove that they made the decision to let Tirzepatide off the shortage list, because of what they said as far as the distro, the refrigerators, whatever else, and the judge agrees with that, that's one thing. But now you have another issue because, like I said, Am I,
What would that issue be?
well, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. And like I said, I know I'm not a lawyer or anything like that at all. But I just, as a normal person, I find it weird that they would respond with someone that specializes in the FDCA because
Yeah.
they did not have to do that. They could have just responded with a lawyer that is involved in the APA, which is most likely normally what they would do.
Which is what they're being sued for. So I see your point. It makes a
Correct.
lot of sense.
Correct.
Oh,
So
Cam.
that's why I say not only do I think they're going to respond to these allegations of being in cohorts with, a pharmaceutical company and not, it's pretty, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty ballsy. You're literally poking at the bear, you're poking at the feds, and you're saying, hey, you guys suck, you don't know how to do your job. Because you don't know how to do your job, I'm going to sue you and I'm going to publicly try and destroy your name to make it known that you don't know how to do your job. There's a lot up here for the FDA because if they lose this or they get made to look like idiots, there's a lot at stake for the FDA. So I'm not surprised if they come back and hit them with a two piece and sue them on grounds of and counter sue them on the grounds of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act because they have hired the lawyer that is specifically trained to do so.
And a lot of people in court cases sue, counter sue as a way to really make the person going, the original complainant going with the lawsuit to try to, that there is consequences on both sides. And I'm with you. And I really think they're pushing because those small 503A pharmacies probably have so much API. And there's no market for it after this. What are they going to do with it?
How is that my question to you is how is that the FDA's problem?
Lot. But so let me just pick your brain on that. So what are your thoughts on the TRO? Because it could come as early as the 15th.
Mm, I think the TRO is going to depend on how the FDA responds because with them bringing the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act into it, they're going to make a play on, this is my assumption, they're going to make a play on patient safety. Not only are they going to try to prove that the facility is outside of the federal law in violation of the federal law, um, they're going to play on patient safety in regards to the amount of product these 503As are, shipping and prescribing. They're going to make a play off of the amount of product and the fact that 503As don't have to follow CGMP. They're going to make a play off of the fact that they are doing injectable medications. They don't have to follow CGMP, and this is what got us into the New England Compounding Center. If the lawyer is really coming for the jugular of these guys, they're going to use all of that plus more. And so, if I'm a judge and I'm looking at that information and I'm understanding how these 503As are moving product in the amount that they are, and I'm understanding that really the TRO was mainly for the 503As, not so much the 503Bs, I have a big decision to make because it's going to be a big deal to decide whether you're going to allow this temporary restriction that could turn in 2 weeks, and if it gets pushed out and all that, and if something happens during that time, that judge is going to be partially responsible because they allowed a temporary restraining order to allow them to continue production. When the FDA, which they're supposed to be the subject matter experts, have warned them and advised them not to because they are trying to stop this activity in terms of patient safety. That would be why I think you would have a hard time getting the TRO. It solely, and then you have the whole argument of, this is really a money grab. This isn't about patient safety. They just want to be able to continue compounding outside of the FDC Act, outside of federal law. They just want to continue to make money. So it really just depends upon how the FDA responds with that lawyer to these allegations. But if they weigh heavily on rejecting the TRO due to patient safety and a bunch of other reasons, I'll say right now, I think there's a 50-50 shot. It also depends on the judge, which I don't really know anything about the judge. I know that all I know is that he's Texas, pointed from Trump. But I don't outside of that. I don't know anything about him.
I try to find rulings in the cases that he's weighed in on. He's never represented anything for Lilly. He did a big Pfizer case. There's a couple. It's hard to see which way he leans. He's
Yeah.
had a couple of like scandals in the headline stuff, just not too big. Just he dilly dally in some cases. I couldn't find a lot of case history on his case log about too much into the Pittman. I couldn't find too much,
Yeah.
but my speculation on the TRO. This is what I think that we'll get I think that we'll get the 14 days. It'll pacify it'll pacify all the steps. It'll help the 503As offload the product. I know that none of this is FDA's problem, but this is what this is what I think will happen that'll make both sides a little bit happy, except for Lilly. I think we'll get the TRO just one round. Well, one 14-day round because we're allowed two. We'll get one 14-day round to help the 503As offload their product and to just pacify the need of the court of public opinion. And then I think that then after the 14 days, then we're really going to see at the injunction hearing. I don't think it'll go through. I think that they will just get the 14 days. And then that'll give the people that rely on telehealth an opportunity to get vials in their refrigerator. And that's what I'm, at the very least, what I'm hoping for on that. But it should be interesting.
Yeah,
But
so
it
it'll
sucks
definitely
that
be
every time I
interesting.
have a theory, I have to come back and say, you know what, Cam, you were right. Not
Well,
working out.
hopefully I'm wrong in this. I think you got a 50-50 shot. I think you got a 50-50 shot. And like I said, I was actually wrong because I thought it was just going to get immediately thrown out. They're entertaining it, and the fact that they made the FDA respond within like 3 to 4 business days, that was pretty insane. That was super quick. Which if I'm the FDA, that's probably going to piss me off anymore. I mean, the thing is, you really don't want to piss off the feds unless you absolutely know that everything you're doing is within federal law. And that's why I think it's kind of surprising to me because it's kind of like you're poking the bear when your hands aren't necessarily clean and they're going to come after you because, I mean, but that's just me. But hey, I think that based off how the FDA responds or is responding with getting someone from that side of the law, that side of the Department of Justice that specializes in the Cosmetics Act, um, you got a 50-50 shot. But would I be surprised if they countersued? I would not be surprised at all.
This is just it's just fat people that don't want to be fat anymore. We want access to obesity care. Oh,
True, but that
it's
is not
crazy how
the
much I never thought in a million years I'd be so wrapped up in every nuance of a court battle. But it's like, here we are.
Yeah, and I agree. And I agree that it is the FDA's responsibility to make a determination, when there is a shortage. But is it the FDA's responsibility to be the sole federal authority that is responsible for allowing all of these 503As and 503Bs to skirt around regulation in order to fix a problem that is essentially a problem between the PBMs, the insurances, and the manufacturers? No. I mean, yes, like I said, you have a small amount of people using compound that literally can't find the name brand within their area. But the majority of the people that, in my opinion, the majority of people using can't afford it with their copay, or it's completely not covered. A lot of people, compound was their only option. And unfortunately, that is not what the Food Drug Cosmetics Act 503A and B exemption is meant to fix. It's not meant to fix accessibility. It's meant to fix availability in terms of a shortage. Accessibility is not the FDA's problem, and it's now become the FDA's problem because all of these compound pharmacies have found a way to evade federal law. And I put an emphasis on they're trying to evade federal law. If you go back to the other videos that we've done that talks about how they're trying to get around the regulation, you're trying to evade federal law. And when you do that, it puts the responsibility back into the FDA's hands because they're the ones responsible for making sure all these 503A and 503B pharmacies are operating in compliance. And I'm telling you, there's no way between them, and the states involved, the state boards, they don't have the resources to do it. Not on the level. It can take one day. It can take multiple days to do one inspection. they don't have the resources to keep up. Especially this, it's only going to continue to grow, and somebody eventually will get hurt.
Right. Well, we shall see, my friend. But thank you so much for coming on again today. Do you have anything else to add before we wrap here? I'm sure we'll get another. Like it's gonna be. The week is just flying by. It's just absolutely flying by.
Yeah,
Ah,
it's definitely going to be interesting. It's
but
definitely
it's
going to be
exciting.
interesting.
I'm
Yes.
I'm
Well,
I'm
yeah.
I'm rooting for it. I'm rooting for the tiara. I just want. I don't know. It's just it
Yeah,
just
most definitely. I mean,
and it doesn't come from a legal perspective. It just comes from that the fact that you have to be wealthy in this country or well insured in order to get life-saving care. It's
and that
just
is unfortunate. That is very
yeah.
unfortunate.
It's a prescription for Lizzo. Rich people get Ozempic, poor people get body positivity.